Okay, in this video we're checking out the URUAV UX14 receiver. This is a 2-in-1 receiver and actually has a FrSky receiver and a FlySky receiver all in the same board here. And just take a closer look at this and just give you a quick idea of what this looks like. Here's the top and this is the bottom. 30 by 30 board, so it'll fit on top of your stack. And yeah, it's a 2-in-1 receiver, but basically it's a FrSky receiver and a FlySky receiver on the same board, but only one or the other is going to be powered on at any one time. So I'll get into the pros and cons of that here in a second. So there are these solder pads right here, little bridges, and you can see that there's going to be these two blobs on top. And if it's in this configuration, which is the default, it will be in the FrSky configuration. If you bridge the middle pad to the bottom pad, so it's going to be bridged the other way, then for the two on the bottom, so instead of being two on top, it'll be two on the bottom, then it'll be configured for FlySky. So basically, this bridging these solder pads here will turn on and off either the FrSky receiver or the FlySky receiver. So only one will be powered up at any one time. So right now it is in the FrSky mode, and pretty much everything on this side of the board, or the top of the board in this case, is FrSky related, including the diversity antennas here, the bind button, the receiver connector here, and then this over here is for smart port. And then everything on the bottom, including the two antennas on the bottom, is going to be for FlySky. And you have an LED there for FlySky, the top LED there is for FrSky. You've got a bind button down here, that's FlySky, and your receiver connector here, that's also FlySky. So everything, basically the board is split in half, most everything related. On the top half of the board is FrSky, and everything on the bottom half of the board is FlySky. Now the type of receiver this is a FrSky D16 receiver, S-bus with telemetry, so it is going to be similar to like the XSR, the RXSR type receivers. It does have the ability to do smart port telemetry, so you can set up RSSI on a channel if you want to do it that way. It works pretty much the same way as an RXSR receiver. If you have this configured for FlySky by doing, again, changing the configuration of these solder pads, and you power up the FlySky side, it'll be an iBus receiver, 14 channels, and it outputs RSSI on channel 14, which you can just set up in your OSD. So it's similar to the, I think it's the FLI14 receiver. So it's basically you have two receivers on the same board instead of two separate receivers. Now the receiver does come with these little micro connectors, and you're probably gonna have to do some soldering. I think it's a 1mm JST connector here, and so they have two of these here with a little servo connector here. Obviously you probably want to do a direct solder to your flight controller or whatever connector you have on your flight controller, and then the outputs on these plugs here are the same for both. Basically it's going to be ground and then 5 volts and then signal. In the case of the FlySky it's going to be iBus, and in the FrSky it's going to be S-bus. And then you have another cable here with some bare wires, plugs in over here, and you probably want to refer to the manual for all the exact connections. One of these is going to be for smart port telemetry, and then you're just going to wire that to probably a TX UART on your flight controller. But otherwise the receiver is pretty much, as far as I can tell, work the same way as any other FrSky or FlySky receiver. They just happen to be on the same board. Now, one of the things I was wondering is if you need to have all 4 antennas connected like I'd have here. I'm assuming here, I'm not 100% sure, if only the FrSky stuff is powered on, there's no power going to the FlySky side, you could probably take these antennas off without any worry, of course, and then move them around to their side if you're going to be running the FlySky. These antennas are pretty fragile, so you may want to just keep them around as spares. What I'm going to be doing for I'm going to show you a little test here. Basically, to bind it, you just hold down the bind button while plugging it in or powering it up, and then you get a green and red light just like you do on an RXSR receiver, and then you can bind it to your transmitter, and then I'll show you that the telemetry is actually working. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to power this up to get into bind mode. It's just like any other FrSky receiver. You can hold down the bind button, and then this has power already here from my flight controller on this craft. I'm going to plug this in, and you can see it's kind of hard to see. It doesn't really come out too well on the camera. One is a green light and one is a solid red light, and that means you're in bind mode. And then you just go to your OpenTX radio. In this case, I have a jumper radio here, and we'll go to bind. You see the light will start flashing. That means we're bound. Go ahead and exit out of there. And then you just have to power cycle the receiver. Then you'll get a solid green light, which means you're bound. And then we have telemetry information here coming back to the radio. It should work for any other OpenTX radio. Let's see here. Go to the telemetry screen, and you can see here on the telemetry screen under the sensors we should have RSSI there, 8685 dB. So you can see that there's again telemetry information back. Also, if you try and power off the radio, it'll tell you that there's a receiver still connected, and then you'll have to confirm to shut off the radio. Then you can see now we have a flashing red light here, which means we have a lost signal here. So you can see it works pretty much the same as an XSR receiver. Now if you want to run this as a FlySky receiver, obviously you're going to have to redo the solder pads here, and then it'll power up this side of the receiver, and then you can follow the same bind instructions. Similar, you just hold down the bind button while powering it on, and you'll get I think it's a flashing green light, which is over here, which means it's going to be in bind mode. And then you go to the radio and bind, and then it will turn from I guess it's a slow or fast flashing to a slow flashing green light, and then you're bound, and then you just have to power cycle everything again, and you should have a connection. And then you have to set up RSSI on channel 14 or aux10 in your OSD to get the RSSI information on your OSD for the FlySky receiver, if you want to use the FlySky receiver side. Okay, so we're going to run a weight of the receiver with the antennas on. It's about 3.9 grams, about 4 grams for the 30 by 30 receiver. So I'll do a sort of a quick range test here, at least of the FrSky receiver side here. Gonna just basically set the radio somewhere, the transmitter somewhere, and then I'm gonna walk away a certain distance, and we're gonna watch the red light here and see when that turns to a flashing red light from a green light, which means we lost signal. Now the claimed range of both receivers at 800 meters is pretty far, so if that's true, then this would be a pretty solid receiver. That's when I'm going to see how far I can go, at least on the ground. Obviously you're going to get more range if you were flying up higher, but I'm just going to walk away on the ground and see how far away the failsafe occurs on this receiver. So I'll show you that at the end. Now, in terms of the pros and cons of this and who this receiver will be for, it's a good question. When I first saw this receiver and was told I was going to be sent this, I was kind of scratching my head. I was like, well, they can't possibly have both receivers active at the same time. That wouldn't make any sense. Of course, it doesn't. So it's basically you can have either one or the other. And I suppose this is going to be useful for someone that maybe has a FrSky system and maybe switching to FlySky or vice versa, and they want to have both receivers available to them, or be able to switch back and forth between FlySky and FrSky, maybe move this receiver around in different crafts, for example, something like that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're exclusively FrSky or exclusively FlySky, having the extra weight of this other receiver you're not using on board is probably not very useful for you. So I'm thinking this is going to be more for guys that are thinking about switching, or potentially in the middle of switching, and might want to have one receiver or the other available to them, and or have the need to go back and forth. That's the only scenario I think this would be useful for. And assuming that the range on this is pretty good, and it's actually reliable receiver, then I guess that would be okay for those particular cases. But other than that, I'm not really sure who else this would be useful for. Yeah, just that specific case where you might be switching back and forth. But if you're already in one ecosystem or the other, I don't think this receiver is going to be particularly useful for you. Anyway, I'll go and I'll show you the range test now. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Okay, so I'm in my car here, and I'm going to leave the transmitter in the car, and it's going to carry the receiver away. See, I've got a green light. The transmitter's on. I'm going to be going down this road over here that's behind these bushes, and it's a straight road. I can go about 800 meters, and we'll see how far I can get. Obviously, these bushes are going to play a little bit of part in reducing my range. Yeah, anyway, so I'm going to go head down this street here and see how far I can go while I still have the green light, knowing that I have a connection to my transmitter. Okay, so just to give you an idea where I'm coming from, my car is over there behind those bushes, and I still have a solid green light. It's kind of hard to see in the sun, so I'm not too far away, about 100 meters. I'm going to go all the way down this road here. See how I can go. Okay, so now I'm about 400 meters away and still have a solid green light. No loss of connection yet. Gonna keep on going. Okay, so now about 600 meters away. The end of the road's right over there. And receiver is kind of going in and out. You can see it's fail-safing. I have a red light there, and it kind of goes back and forth between red light and green light. So this is about it right here in terms of how far I can go. Okay, so that should give you guys an idea of how far you can go in this. Keep in mind I was low on the ground, not in the air, so you're going to get more range if you're in the air. And also those bushes are in the way. That might have an effect on the range, but this is probably the best kind of a range test I can do where I can actually see the receiver fail-safing, and it went about 600 meters on the ground. And if you go in the air, you'll probably get the 800 meters that they're advertising.